Today's Take 5 with the Saints, May the 4th, is Saint Monica. This Monica happens to be the mother of a famous saint, Saint Augustine of Hippo. But there's an old saying, behind every good man is a better woman. And in this case, Monica, by the admission of her own son, whose we know of Monica's life only through her son's writings in his autobiography, The Confessions, was a woman of profound faith and yet far from perfect. She was a person who had, like her son, her own struggles and waywardness in early life, but became one of the great pillars of the faith and a person whose example, especially for her son Augustine, paved the way for an understanding of the breadth of God's love and presence for those who call upon Him. The gospel reading for today comes out of John chapter 16, verses 20 through 24. Jesus said, "Very truly I tell you, you will weep and mourn, but the world will rejoice. You will have pain, but your pain will turn into joy. When a woman is in labor, she has pain because her hour has come. But when her child is born, she no longer remembers the anguish because of the joy of having brought a human being into the world. So you have pain now, but I will see you again, and your hearts will rejoice, and no one will take your joy from you. On that day you will ask nothing of me. Very truly I tell you, if you ask anything of the Father in my name, He will give it to you. Until now you have not asked for anything in my name. Ask, and you will receive, so that your joy may be complete." Monica was born around the year 331. She herself was a Berber, or a native of North Africa at the time, born in the province of Tagaste, which is in modern-day Algeria, and at a young age married a Latin provincial named Patricius, who ultimately, by the time Patricius died, he had converted to Christianity, but it was not exactly a linear path to that process. Patricius was known to have a wandering eye, so to speak, and for that matter, Monica was reputed by Augustine to have the same. Their marriage was not exactly the smoothest, all the way up to Patricius's death, but a couple of things happened for Monica in particular that helped her to settle down. Once she gave birth, she had 3 children, 2 of whom survived, Augustine and her brother. When her children were being raised, she recognized that she needed to change her ways. She was baptized into the faith, and ultimately, with great resistance initially, but ultimately her husband allowed her to baptize the children. But in the process of watching her own son go through his struggles of waywardness in his youth, she began to become the person who was known as Weeping Monica. It was a tradition after she, according to one legend, and this is partly mentioned by Augustine, where she visited a certain bishop whose identity was unknown, who she confided in her concerns about her son Augustine. He consoled her with the words, "The child of those tears shall never perish." Monica, as such, part of the legend, but partly part of the truth of her story, is the fact that she was known to cry in agony and in prayer, especially in those years in which Augustine was, let's say, enjoying the fruits of sowing his oats, so to speak, but also even after he converted to the faith and was becoming one of the great leaders and teachers of the faith, which was only very much beginning in its infancy when Monica died, but she was known to pray with tears for him at all times. She herself had a strange custom that is mentioned by Augustine, in which, after her conversion, she would bring to oratories or prayer shrines certain memories of saints, offerings of porridge or bread or water or wine. And at some point she was discouraged, and in particular by the Bishop of Milan, another one of our saints on the calendar, Ambrose, because in traveling to Milan, which is where Augustine was ultimately baptized, he forbade her to do that because he said that it might be an occasion for gluttony for those who were already given to drink to leave wine on the offerings. So from Augustine's Confessions, he writes of his mother, In place of a basket filled with fruits of the earth, she had learned to bring to the oratories of the martyrs a heart full of pure petitions and to give all that she could to the poor, so that the communion of the Lord's body might be rightly celebrated in those places where, after the example of his passion, the martyrs had been sacrificed and crowned. In other words, his mother began to bring not only relics of saints, but also left offerings of good deeds to give to people who were in need, and not only left them at oratories, but became known as someone who would distribute them directly to the poor, recognizing this as one of the great calls of her ministry. Again, as we've mentioned, they traveled from Africa to Milan, where Augustine was baptized by Bishop Ambrose in 387. As they were traveling home to Africa, particularly in the port of Ostia, which is the port of Rome, Monnica fell ill. And in that point is where Augustine and his brother, who was traveling with him, they simply did not know what to do. They looked at their mother and were worried that she was not going to survive the voyage, that they were going to have to bury her in an alien soil. To which she replied, again as recounted by Augustine, "It does not matter where you bury my body. Do not let that worry you. All I ask of you is that wherever you may be, you should remember me at the altar of the Lord." And she went on to say, "Nothing is far from God." And as far as burying her in a foreign land, she said, "I need have no fear that he will not know where to find me when he comes to raise me to life at the end of the world." A woman whose profound insight into God's workings, into the resurrection, and into the call, particularly for her son Augustine. Again, a woman who raised her sons, and in particular the one who is known to us very well in history as someone who became a pious and faithful servant of God because of the prayers and work and love and passion of his mother for him. So today we give thanks to Saint Monnica and remember her for her sacrifices, for her gifts to the poor, and particularly for her love to raise up her son as a saint and to help him remember that always God is watching over those who are seeking to live and serve and to draw closer to Christ in every respect. Thanks for joining me. Look forward to having you for our next Saint of the Day tomorrow. Take care.